Let's talk about marriage. Oh boy, marriage. A joy, a true happiness, an amazing life, or a source of pain, source of frustration, source of disappointment. And I tell you, for many, many Jehovah's Witnesses who in the Kingdom Hall, they look like the perfect couple. Look like, you know what, these people, they have no problems. They look so happy, always well dressed. They're always together, and they're always, seem to be so happy. And yet, behind the closed doors, it's a totally different story. I think one of the most often problems that the elders have to deal with is with marriage, where couple comes and they're describing what the other person is doing, and oh boy, the stories that you would hear, you're wondering, like, are you serious? Are you actually describing the person that we know in the Kingdom Hall? Because in the Kingdom Hall they look like a saint, but behind the closed doors it's a totally different story. But let's talk about it. Can we have a really amazing life? Can we really have an amazing marriage? Can we really have a happy marriage when two people truly love and care about each other outside of the religion, outside of that establishment? Or was it only possible inside? Well, the reality is a totally different story from what we were told. At least I've seen that many times. That doesn't mean that you cannot be happy as a Jehovah's Witness. I was very happy, and my marriage was a happy marriage. And I've seen many happy marriages in the Jehovah's Witnesses. I've seen people who were happier because they became Jehovah's Witnesses. Don't get me wrong. I'm not all one-sided. I've seen people who were miserable and they became witnesses and their marriage life really improved. Some people said straight out to me if they would not last as a married couple if they didn't become a Jehovah's Witnesses, or if they didn't follow the instructions that they were told, and they would not be together. But because they stuck together, because they followed what they were told, they are happy today after decades of marriage. So we got to look at the good, bad, and ugly on every aspect. But here's where the challenges are. And I'll mention about some of the challenges. Well, the first challenge is when you choose a partner. When you choose a partner, what you are encouraged to do is to look for somebody who has a good status in the religion. You're not looking for somebody who actually will take care of your needs, or you can take care of their needs, or somebody who will provide for you, or somebody that will be a good partner. You're looking for somebody who has maybe a four-door sedan and is a pioneer, or a ministerial servant, or a lady that is volunteering as a pioneer as well. And usually those choices are done at a very young age, because the policy of no sex before marriage, it's basically a lot of young people are like, well, I got to get married in order to have sex. Therefore, marriage is a license for sex. At a young age, that drive is quite strong. So a lot of people made really poor choices, and they made the choice very quick, and just to realize that right after they got married, they're like, what have I done? I didn't know what I was doing. What? For many people, it's too late. And it's really hard to watch. And I talked to many Jehovah's Witnesses while I was a Jehovah's Witness. They were coming to me and they were asking me for advice, for help, because they didn't know what to do. I tell you just few cases where people would live under the same roof and they would be married, but they would sleep in two different bedrooms for a decade, for 10 years straight. I'm like, what? You guys live like roommates? But in the Kingdom Hall, you would never know. They looked so happy. They looked like a perfect couple. But at home, they're roommates. It's hard to watch, how to hear those stories. And they feel stuck because they're both very strong believers, and none of them wants to cheat on the other partner. So what do? Even if they separate, right? They cannot remarry. They cannot go to somebody else. They're stuck. Sometimes they're hoping that the other person will cheat on them. Stories are happening when people make up stories. They go to the elders and they say, I cheated on my husband, I cheated on my wife, even though it's not true, just so they can get out of the marriage. countless stories like this I've heard. When people actually make up that story, it's not true, and they want a ticket from the elders to say, yeah, well, this marriage is over. Now the other person can remarry. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy when they need the elders to tell them what they can and cannot do. Here's another challenge. When one person decides to leave and they're gone, they're like gone. Why are they gone? Well, maybe they met somebody. Maybe they just felt like, okay, I'm gone. I don't want this anymore. They leave the religion. They leave the spouse. Let's say there's no kids, and they move sometimes to another country, to another city, and the person has no contact. What do you do? How do you go to the elders and say, I want to marry somebody else. I have a real divorce, but I can't prove if my spouse, my ex, cheated on me because I have no contact with them and they're not willing to talk to me. And I've seen that happen in the young 20-year-olds, and they're stuck. They're thinking, I have to be single for the rest of my life, or if I get married with somebody else, I'm going to be disfellowshipped because I don't have what they call a scriptural divorce. Worse happens when I heard one case when the gentleman, his wife admitted to him that she had somebody else. She left the religion, she left him. She said, I want to be with somebody else, some guy who's not a JW. She moved out. She told him. He went to the elders. They didn't believe him. He said, we need two witnesses. We need her confession to us, or we need two witnesses. He's like, how am I supposed to provide you two witnesses of my wife having sex with somebody else? That's not possible, right? And they're like, sorry, we can't do nothing. So what he did, he called his wife and he recorded the conversation. During that recording, she admitted that she was living with somebody else, that she didn't want to come back with him, and the marriage is basically over. He was so happy. Very short-lived. He went to the elders, he presented the recording. The elders said, you're supposed to provide two witnesses, not a recording. The recording is not admissible in our court. He's like, you got to be kidding me. This is my wife saying that she lives with another boyfriend, right? And you're telling me that's not enough? And they're like, no, because we don't know if that's your wife or not. It's a recording. Maybe that was your friend pretending to be your wife. We don't know. We need to sit with her, and she has to tell us what she has done. And like, no, she's in another city already. That's one. Second, she's not a witness anymore. She left. Third, she's not willing. What am I supposed to do? Stuck. And if he goes and marries somebody else, he would have to face a judicial committee. And I've seen that happen when people got disfellowshipped, although they were convinced and they knew that their spouse cheated on them, but they simply couldn't prove it. Now, things get worse when one person decides to leave the religion, but they're deciding to stay in a marriage, and both are like fighting against each other. Because separation is one thing, but when you're inside a home, in an environment when you're really toxic, and when you're coming home and you're just all stressed out, that's no life. That's really tough. So what happens is this. One person starts questioning, and the other one, sometimes a backfire effect. I know that very well because it happened in my life. It happened in my marriage. When I started questioning, I started sharing some of my doubts with my wife, and instead of her starting to think, she started putting up a really big fight. I didn't know if my marriage is going to last or not. It really was a very intense situation at home. So it's very challenging when both people have this intent to change the other. Okay. So when when both people are Jehovah's Witnesses, they're trying to follow the rules that Jehovah's Witnesses are putting upon them. But when one person leaves, then very often both are trying to influence the other as much as they possibly can. One is trying to get the other person out, while this one is trying to bring the other person in. The tension is so high that when we see that we're trying to, manipulate somebody else, oh boy, then it's really, really challenging. See, there's already tension in this kind of marriages for Jehovah's Witnesses, because there's two requirements that Jehovah's Witnesses constantly putting out to the married couple that are really tough to follow, really tough. And most people they have a hard time admitting even to the elders that they're not following those rules. And those two rules are very simple. One is for a woman and one is for a man. For a woman, she has to be obedient to a man. And it's really tough for women, because a lot of times they see that the guy who's trying to be their head is incompetent in many ways. And she's a lot more smarter and much more practical than him. And she has to be obedient. She has to follow his lead. And it's really tough for her to do this. I don't know of any girl that is getting married. It's like, oh, I can't wait to be obedient to this man. That just doesn't happen very often. So it's really tough, right, for women to be obedient to their husbands. And the second one for men is that the guy is supposed to be the spiritual head of his wife and family. Basically, what that means is he has to conduct Bible studies with his wife and family. It is not easy for most men to sit and read a book, right? A lot of guys are very practical. They're hands-on. They want to, work with tools. They're especially among Jehovah's Witnesses. Actually, a lot of them are tradesmen. A lot of them, they're maintenance people. They're not the type of people who would just sit and read books and study books, right? Now, sit with your wife and try to teach her from a book and how she's supposed to obey you. That is not something that most guys enjoy. It's not. It's very challenging for them. Now, here's another aspect. And I'm guilty of it too. I have to admit, I'm guilty of it too. If a man is trying to reach out for privileges in a congregation, to be a ministerial servant or be an elder, what he does obviously matters, because the rest of the body of elders is watching him as a candidate to be one of the elders. So everything that he does matters. But what also matters is what his wife does, how she dresses, how she talks. Is she active in the congregation? What is she pioneering? Is she answering at the meetings? Is she doing all those things? So what she does reflects on him, and he knows it. So I remember that was in my case. The elders sat down with me and they said, well, we see that you're reaching out, and we're very happy to see that that you're putting a lot of effort. But we see that your wife is not very active. She's not answering at the meetings, and sometimes she's missing the meetings, and sometimes, that her hours are a little bit low. So they just wanted to see her being a little bit more active in the congregation. I'm like, okay. Guess what that did? Well, in order for me to get the privilege, I felt like I did everything I possibly could, and I couldn't get it because of her. So now I'm putting pressure on her, for her to answer at the meetings, to prepare, to be there early, to show the example, right? She wanted to go to the cottage on the weekend. They were like, no, we have to be there at the meeting. We have to be on service, right? The elders have to see us, right? We have to sit on front of the elders so they see that you're putting up your hand and all those things. So I was putting pressure on her, and that does create quite a bit of stress. If somebody's trying to put a pressure on you so you do something you don't want to do so they can benefit from it, it doesn't sit well with most people, right? So now I'm guilty of it. I understand it now that my wife was definitely not happy about the pressure that I was putting on her, and it was creating a lot of stress in our marriage. many times. I would say a minimum once or twice a week before the meeting. She usually was taking much longer than me to get ready, as most women would, and I wanted to be there early. I wanted to make sure that I'm reaching out and they see me there early. I don't want to walk into the Kingdom Hall a minute before the meeting starts. But it was not a problem for my wife. So we were, arguing sometimes over this, and it was creating tension. So why am I saying this? Is because after we both left and those pressures were gone, when I no longer viewed my wife as someone who has to reflect on me, as somebody that has to do certain things so I'll benefit from it, it completely changed our marriage. Completely. And we were a good, happy couple. But our love exponentially grew because all of a sudden, I didn't see her as a complement of me. I didn't see my wife as somebody who has to be obedient to me. I didn't see her as somebody who will reflect on me. I saw her as an equal partner. I saw her totally different. Her word, her decisions are just as strong as mine. There was no such thing as, oh, you have to tell me your opinion and then I'm going to make the decision. It was totally different. We make decisions together. And that created a totally different dynamic. And that's not what Jehovah's Witnesses teach. But once you experience this, once you get rid of that pressure, oh, you have to be this and this, and you have to be obedient, and you can tell me your opinion, but I'm going to make my decision anyways. And whether you like it or not, you have to respect it. That kind of leadership is it's really challenging, and no wonder a lot of marriages were not happy. And we had those challenges too. But now the true happiness in marriage, I tell you, is when you can be yourself, when you can show the good, the bad, the ugly, that you can be authentic, you can say whatever you think, whatever you feel, you're not afraid of judgment, and you know that you're going to be loved. You know you're going to be accepted. You don't have to worry about the reaction, that what they're going to say, what they're going to think. And you're not trying to mold them or manipulate them into something that they don't want to be. If they don't want to be something, if they don't want to be someone, if they don't want to do something, then why would you force them? Because it looks good on you, on front of others? That idea has to go out the window, because it creates a lot of pressure for Jehovah's Witnesses, for ex-Jehovah's Witnesses who leave the arrangement of Jehovah's Witnesses. And a lot of times they don't know how to have a happier life. As a matter of fact, a lot of people struggle at the beginning because they leave and they're like, hey, hold on a second. I never had my kind of youth. And they think, well, if I'm no longer under those rules that the Jehovah's Witnesses are telling me, then I can do whatever I want. And they start flirting with other people, and maybe they start partying, and maybe they start doing things that they would never do as witnesses. And a lot of stuff is maybe inappropriate, and there are consequences to it. But they realize about those consequences much later. So it's very important to actually outgrow it. Instead of going down a level, you go up a level. When you cherish the person a lot more, when you appreciate them a lot more, when you see them as equal partner, when you let them be as authentic as they can be, when they're never afraid of your reaction, they're never afraid of what you're going to say, what you're going to think, they're never afraid of your judgment. You can disagree, and it's okay. It's okay to disagree. It's not this structure where, okay, you can say whatever you want, but I'm going to do it my way anyways. It's really tough. It's really tough. But don't get me wrong, for some people that works. And for some people, their marriage was not working until they got into the system of Jehovah's Witnesses and they started working together. And the reason why that works is because they had very little in common. But when they started being Jehovah's Witnesses, they had more and more things in common, and they were working on the same goals, and that brought them together. I will never dismiss this. It's true. It worked for some people. But what I'm saying is now that you leaving the organization, a lot of people realize that they had nothing in common except the religion. And when the religion is gone, the marriage really is in trouble because they're like, we're totally two different people. We totally loved two different things, and we have totally two different values and beliefs. And it's very little things that are in common that the people can bring together to the table and say, you know what, we can work here as a team. And it's really tough because the choices that they have made were not based on people's values and what they value in another person, but it was based on the religious status. Like, oh, I'm going to choose this girl because she's a pioneer, or I'm going to choose this guy because he's a ministerial servant. And now you leave and you're like, whoa, outside of the religion, what is it really that we have in common? You want to know the key to happiness? Allow your partner to be authentic and appreciate everything they do. Just imagine yourself without them for a moment. What is it in your life that you have because of them? How many gifts? Because I guarantee you there's tons of them that most of us take it for granted. But the moment they're missing in our life, then we're like, oh my gosh, whew, I forgot they do so much. Here's a key in one sentence to happy marriage. Change your expectations into appreciation, and the whole marriage will change. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.